All right. Over the weekend, U.S. senators projected optimism that they would be able to finish by August recess the bipartisan infrastructure package currently being negotiated by a group of Senate Democrats and Republicans. Meanwhile, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi reiterated yesterday that she would not hold a vote on the $1.2 trillion infrastructure package until the Senate passes the second larger $3.5 trillion spending bill.
I won't put it on the floor until we have the rest of the initiative.
But if you stick by that decision, you could end up with nothing. Senator Lindsey Graham has threatened that Republicans will walk out of the Capitol if necessary to prevent any action on reconciliation, just like the Democrats did down in Texas.
Well, let me just say, you talk to Lindsey Graham about what he says. I'm telling you what's going to happen in the House of Representatives, and that is that we are rooting for the infrastructure bill to pass, but we all know that more needs to be done.
Well, and we're going to talk to Lindsey Graham about that. Joining us now is U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, ranking member on the Senate Budget Committee and a member of the Appropriations Committee and the Judiciary Committee. Senator, welcome back to the program.
Hey, thanks, Tony. Well, you're talking to me if Stephanopoulos is not. That's good.
Well, Nancy Pelosi says, she doesn't know what you're going to say. She says what she's going to say, but I want to hear what you're going to say. This bipartisan bill, I know you're actually a part of the negotiations.
Right.
Kind of, there's some issues over the formula by which this money is going to be dispensed to the states on the infrastructure. There's some other issues. Right. How's it going to be financed? How's it going to be paid for? Where does it stand?
Okay, I think it stands a little bit in limbo right now. But so let me tell your listeners what I believe. I believe roads, ports, and bridges need a facelift. I don't think we need a $3.5 trillion bill. That they're proposing is not infrastructure. What Nancy Pelosi is talking about is a liberal wish list, mandatory paid family leave. We may like that concept, but the day you make it a federal government mandate, it's going to increase cost of business, which will be passed on to us, which increases inflation. So the $3.5 trillion package, I would walk out before I would let that thing pass. They're talking about putting amnesty in it, which would blow a bigger hole in the border. So what we're talking about is roads, bridges, and ports. There's $559 billion of new money. We take a lot of the money for COVID, Tony, and allocate it to infrastructure. There's no tax increases. It's got to be paid for by offsetting other areas of the government in terms of expense. There are two real issues now. Requiring Davis-Bacon law to apply to this bill, which would create a prevailing wage requirement. It's a union-backed initiative that requires federal projects to pay prevailing wages, which drives up the cost of the project. It's called Davis-Bacon. We don't want that in this infrastructure bill. And how much money to give to urban areas in the transit portion of transportation, the big city infrastructure, rails and bridges and that kind of stuff. It's an 80-20 split, and the Democrats want to change it. I hope we can get there. I think we need a infrastructure package that's truly infrastructure. I want it to be paid for. But when it comes to $3.5 trillion bill that's more like $5, I would fight that as hard as I could fight it. And if you put amnesty in it for illegal immigrants, it'd be a disaster of all disasters.
So, Senator, the $1.2 trillion infrastructure plan that has bipartisan support, as you said, this is going to be offset, so no new taxes to pay for this. This actually, in a way, creates economic growth and activity because it's upgrading our infrastructure and allowing businesses and others to have benefit of that.
Yeah, well, see, the $3.5 trillion bill is inflationary.
Yeah, right. Well, let's
roads and bridges.
I want to separate those first. The 1.2 trillion.
Yeah, okay. The 1.2 is really $559 billion of new money. Take 559 out, and that's what the new money is. The rest of the money is already allocated through COVID and other programs, and we're just going to direct it to infrastructure. The main thing you nailed is that we're talking about putting money into road, rail, and systems over multiple years that will create demand in the out years that will reduce inflation.
Right.
The main thing is what you put your finger on. This is a bill that funds infrastructure projects over multiple years that will create demand in the economy, which is a good thing.
Right. So that's why it has bipartisan support. Then we get to the 3.5 trillion. You say it could end up being 5 trillion, which they call human infrastructure. That's all of the social programs for the left. That's their grab
I've never
bag.
driven on human infrastructure. I've never driven on human infrastructure or parked a boat in human. Yeah,
well, I don't know. There's a lot of
spending.
There's a lot of humans on Capitol Hill that are driving me crazy. In the rest of America.
Count me in that camp.
So
But
this is the one you're opposing because this is all new spending, and I want one other point is that this is not the annual. These are not appropriations bills. This is on top of what the government normally spends. So we're talking about another 3.5 trillion on top of everything else.
I wish I could do this interview worldwide because you're the first guy to ever actually talk about the difference in the bills. So the $3.5 trillion infrastructure package has nothing to do with roads, bridges, and ports. It's on top of what we spend to run the government. It expands programs that are social programs that will never go away. So it's not $3.5 trillion. All these programs, I think, once they're up and running, will be hard to get rid of. And if you look at the cost over 10 years, it's more than $5 trillion. Let me give you an example of this bill. Paid family leave. It's going to be a federal mandate. They're going to mandate, paying for home health care attendants, people who provide care to family loved ones. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a cost to the Treasury, right? And at the end of the day, that's not going to create a job. What it's going to do is create cost to business. So if you own a business out there and you're going to have to pay paid family leave, that becomes an expense of your business. You're going to pass that cost on to the consumer, and It's going to create inflation.
Right. And so where's this money coming from?
It's coming from the debt. It will be borrowed. They're going to say they'll pay for it, but here's what's going to happen. They're going to try to pay for it, Tony, and the first thing they're going to do is raise corporate taxes to whatever level that Joe Manchin will agree to. There won't be a dime of tax increases in the bipartisan bill because that's the last thing you want to do, impose more cost on business and people where you're trying to recover. So if you go, let's say, from 21 to 25, that's $600 billion of revenue. Well, that only pays for 600 of $3.5 trillion. They're going to have to raise capital gains rates. They're going to have to change the estate tax deductions, lower it for family farmers. This is going to be a massive increase in taxes to pay for this bill, and a lot of the offsets, I think, will be phony. But the one thing you can count on is if they try to pay for this bill, they're going to be limited pretty much to raising taxes to do it at a time when the economy is trying to recover.
So now Nancy Pelosi, as President Biden is doing, is coupling these two bills together. She's saying now she's not going to vote on the 1.2 trillion until she has the 3.5 trillion. So is she trying to hold the Senate hostage to her demands?
I think what she's telling the American people that my liberal wish list is more important to the Democratic Party than roads, bridges, and ports. So if you had a bipartisan bill that really was truly infrastructure, that would create demand in the economy in the out years because you're building things, and Democratic House and Senate leaders refuse to take it up because they want the tax and spend package, I think we'll blow them out in 2022. I think the public is ready for a facelift of our roads and bridges and ports, but the public is very leery of inflation, and this $3.5 trillion package is very inflationary. If she does that, then I think we'll have a campaign issue we don't have today. Right now, their second win on the border is completely broken. Crime is rampant, and inflation is just spiraling out of control because of all this spending. If you add on top of that, stopping progress on true infrastructure because you want more spending and taxes, I think that becomes a death blow to the Democratic Party in 2022.
Well, I hope you're right. Unfortunately, Senator Graham, as always, we run out of time. I did not even get to our foreign policy issues of Iran and Cuba.
Exactly. You did a good job of explaining the two bills. Nobody's ever done that before. That's very important.
Well, I want to get you to come back on so we can talk foreign policy. I want to talk Iran, Cuba, and China. Some of your favorite topics.
Absolutely.
All right, Senator, great to talk with you. Thanks so much for being with us. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. He's really one of the most knowledgeable